Hi, welcome to Placebo. My name is Kaylin Richards, and this is my brother.
And I'm Logan Richards.
And today, we're going to talk about longevity.
Okay.
Okay? So, the other day...
I wasn't very excited.
You weren't very excited. Do you want
Longevity?
to try again? Yeah, okay.
All right.
All right. So, the other day, I was watching Parks and Rec.
You were?
I was. Have you seen that before?
I have. It's not even on TV anymore.
I was watching it on the Netflix.
Okay.
Okay. It's such a funny show. Never out of style.
Okay.
Okay.
Good review.
Okay, so for people who haven't seen it, you should see it because it's really funny. It's about life in a small town in a Parks and Rec department, basically, in like local government.
Yes.
I would say.
Interesting stuff.
It's really funny.
Uh-huh.
So I was watching this scene with Chris, who is like a town manager. I would guess it doesn't really matter.
He's super into health.
He's super into health. He's played by Rob Lowe. And so let's just play a little clip from it, the show, the scene that kind of caught my attention.
Hey, Leslie, welcome.
Wow, you have a lot of bottles there.
Oh, yeah. Would you like a vitamin? B12? Evening primrose oil? Willow bark? Magnesium?
No, thank you.
Sure. Really good for hangovers.
Okay, I'll take one.
I take care of my body above all else. Diet, exercise, supplements, positive thinking. Scientists believe that the first human being who will live 150 years has already been born. I believe I am that human being.
There's a little kind of smirk at the end there. Uh-oh. Wait, stop. So
that was great.
That was a great clip. So he says, scientists believe the first human being who will live 150 has already been born, and he thinks he probably would be that person.
All right, let's talk about the accuracy of that statement. Do scientists believe that?
So I decided I would search it, right?
Good. I was hoping you would.
Yeah, no, I did. So to kind of back up a little bit, in 2010, which I think is the most recent data for the U.S.
Okay. Most recent data from the U.S.
Yeah. For life expectancy, people that were born in 2010, they expected women would live 81.0 years and men 76.2 years.
Okay.
Okay. Obviously, that's an average. A lot of people live longer than that, so
right.
that could maybe include that 150. I think
before we get started,
Chris. Oh yeah.
Can you tell me right now what is the oldest person that
I can
has
tell
ever
you.
Lived?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Just so I have
I was going to save it for a fun fact at the very end, but I can say it now if you want.
Well, I need to know, is 100, obviously I don't know anyone that's been 150, but
no.
Is 150, that big an accomplishment? Or is it only, slightly older than...
The oldest recorded, clear recorded person was 122 when she passed away.
122.
So we'll come back to her at the end, because she's pretty cool.
You'll tell me more about her.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that Chris, or the writers for Parks and Rec, were basing their statement there off of the work of Aubrey de Grey.
Okay.
Have you heard of him before?
No.
So he's British. He's from Cambridge. He actually was first a computer scientist, and then he went into biology and is a gerontologist, which means he studies old age and aging.
Okay.
So he is really big into, he thinks that aging is a disease, it is not inevitable, and that people should not accept it.
Ooh.
And
that sounds like a controversial view.
He is a bit of a controversial person from what I'm getting.
Okay.
But he is a serious academic guy. I think he has a research degree in biology from Cambridge in England, and
that seems reasonable.
Yeah. And he's an adjunct professor at the University of Moscow, and he's on the board of a peer-reviewed journal about aging and several boards about ethics and aging and stuff like that.
Okay.
So he's a serious guy. He looks like a mountain man if you look at him. He's got super long hair, super long beard.
Is he actually 500 and he's...
No, he's in his 40s right now, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I actually found a recent interview with him where he said that he thinks the first person to live to 1,000 may already be alive.
Whoa, so that's a big jump.
Pushing it a lot more than 150, and maybe they just thought 1,000 sounded too crazy for their TV show.
Well, yeah, or who knows? Parks and Rec is old. Maybe, it's a few years old, right?
Maybe he's updated his views since then.
Yeah, probably the real Chris Traeger still now thinks he's going to be 1,000.
He thinks that the interviewer had asked him, do you think that could be you, like someone in their 40s. And he said there was maybe a 30% chance that the technology they're working on now could affect someone in his age range.
So he's thinking younger people. Younger people will...
Right. So possibly that he could live, or someone in his age range could live longer, but...
Well, if he's saying 1,000 for the younger people, he might make it to 150.
If things I think that he's very optimistic too. I don't know that the majority of researchers are necessarily agreeing with him. It's hard to say. Okay. So a little bit about him. I've talked about him a little bit in his roles or his previous education, and he does some teaching. His biggest role, though, is that he is the chief science officer and co-founder of, it's called SENS Foundation.
All right.
Which is a research foundation.
Does it stand for something?
Yeah, Strategies for Engineered Negligible Senescence.
Ooh, well, I understand why they made it into an acronym.
Senescence, I looked that up because who knows what that word means.
You know what all words mean.
I've never heard of that word. Do you know that word?
Apparently it's not a real word if you don't know it.
It's a real word. I don't know it.
Okay.
It means condition of deterioration with age. So that negligible deterioration with age is what they're saying.
Okay. So what does that mean in normal words?
So they're researching how you can engineer life that does not degrade with age.
Okay. What does the negligible part mean? Does that mean we're not doing our part to...
No. Negligible deterioration. So the senescence means deterioration with age.
Oh.
So negligible deterioration with age.
Okay.
So, yeah, he says that a lot of people think that getting older and dying is kind of inevitable or natural or like the way life is supposed to be or what gives our life meaning. Okay. He disagrees with all that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I think certainly from a maybe religious perspective, a lot of people think that you want to get to the next life. You don't want to stay here.
Certainly.
But I think he would not agree with that either. He thinks you should keep living. And he says that people don't want to get sick. As you get older, it just becomes more and more likely that you will get sick.
I would find that to be true. People often don't want to get sick.
And so, yeah, he says, I don't work on longevity. I work on keeping people healthy. That's what he describes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he would not like the topic of our podcast.
So was it what?
Longevity.
Yeah. So sorry about that. I didn't realize that when I named it. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more, kind of a lot more about his ideas and his research, and then we'll go back to what Chris said at the beginning.
Okay, good.
And kind of loop back around to that.
Exciting.
Okay. So he says that aging is the result of the body not being able to repair itself over time. When you're young, you can repair your body pretty easily. That's why,
right.
Kids get sick. They recover pretty easily. Older adults don't recover as well.
Okay.
So he thinks that there are 7 key areas that need to be addressed, that need to be solved to prevent aging.
Oh, good.
Okay.
This sounds pretty black and white.
I know.
Everything's very clear.
This is the areas. And he also says that, like, when you're young and, like, up to your 20s and your 30s, you still, your body's not accumulating enough damage to really age, what he considers it, age in such a way that you can't recover well, that you can't
right.
Heal well from illness, whatever. So he thinks that people would age like they do now up to where they were maybe in their 40s, and then they would start having these treatments that he's describing that we'll get into that would kind of keep you at that level, like maybe in your early 40s.
Okay.
So I'm only 30, so I should feel pretty good.
Having not been 40, I'm not sure if that's a level I want to be at or not.
So he's in his 40s, so maybe he's like, yeah, I could stay here. It's okay. So the 7 areas that he thinks need to be addressed.
Okay.
And
I don't like how clear this is. The fact that it's super clear makes me want to question it.
Right. I know. I just felt kind of a little bit suspicious of the whole thing. It makes sense. I don't think it's quite as easy as he thinks it's going to be or that he presents. But he's the one that's researching it, not us. So
that's true. Let's hear what he has to say.
Here's what he has to say. So area number 1, mutations on the chromosomes that cause cancer. So over time, when you are, exposed to environmental factors, to toxins that you're taking in the environment, you could get mutations in your chromosomes in your DNA that can cause a cancer.
Okay.
Okay, so this is something he says needs to be solved.
Okay. Does that have to do with there's that theory that the telomeres get shorter and shorter with each replication?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, this is in this segment. So when your cells divide, you have to keep your cells have a definite lifespan. He agrees with that. Your cells, your individual cells should not live forever.
Right.
So cells divide, they have their lifespan, and then they need to die, and then a new cell needs to divide to kind of keep your body regenerating itself. Okay. So your body's ability to do that declines with age, in part because, so we'll go back to a little bit of a basic. Your DNA, all your DNA that makes you, that your body uses to create all the cells and structures in your body.
Right, I've heard of that before.
Is stored in chromosomes.
Okay.
How many chromosomes are in a human?
23.
23 pairs.
Times 2.
Yes. There are 46 total. They're in pairs.
Okay.
And at the end of each chromosome is a structure called a telomere.
Right.
Okay. And each time as the chromosome replicates, the telomere gets a little bit shorter, and a little bit shorter, and a little bit shorter.
Okay.
So it kind of has a finite lifespan on its ability to, and this is, as a cell is replicating, the chromosomes are replicating, the telomere gets a little shorter.
Okay.
So it has a finite limitation on how many times it can do that, because the telomere gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and eventually it's gone.
And then it starts destroying the real information.
And then it starts destroying information that is needed, that's on your DNA, that's not this extra telomere bit on the end.
Okay.
And so then you start losing important information. You might get more mutations in there. And so that is one problem that he thinks needs to be solved.
Okay. That seems reasonable.
Okay. Next one is mutations again, but in the mitochondria. Do you remember what mitochondria are?
Yes, that's the powerhouse of the cell.
Okay, so they're a structure inside the cell, inside all cells, I think.
Inside, yes. And they make ATP.
They make ATP, which is used to make the cell do things. It's like the energy system.
It's energy.
Yeah, okay. And another fact or thing that the mitochondria do is they regulate cell death. So as I was talking about before, cells have like a finite lifespan. They exist for a little while, they have their function, and then they need to die at the appropriate time. They self-destruct. They called it apoptosis. Yeah. So that another cell can take their place,
Okay.
And if they are not functioning properly, they can lead to cells not dying at the right time, or so staying on too long.
Yeah.
Or dying too quickly. And that caused problems with the balance of cells in the body.
That's interesting. That's a function of the mitochondria that I didn't know before.
Didn't know either. Okay, there's two categories here that are kind of related. They're both junk. We call them junk. So junk building up inside the cells of the body, or junk building up outside the cells.
That's a technical term.
Yeah.
The junk.
I put it in quotes, but he didn't say it in quotes. He just put it. So inside the cells, your cells typically dispose of unneeded proteins or byproducts, whatever, to keep everything clean and tidy.
Sure.
And if they are not cleaned up, then things can build up inside a cell and become harmful. So they said an example of a disease that results from this is macular degeneration.
Oh, okay.
So if the cell can't clean itself and take care of itself, diseases can develop.
Okay.
Same thing if there are junk building up outside of the cells, if the body is not able to clean itself effectively, I guess. Okay.
I don't fully understand extracellular space, but...
I don't either, but this is what I'm saying about it
now. Maybe we can do a show on that later.
Okay. They said that an example of this is when they found that with people with Alzheimer's, they get plaques in the brain that they can see when they do autopsies. Mm-hmm. And that would be an example of junk building up outside of cells.
Okay.
This type of plaque.
That makes sense.
Okay. Okay, what are we on now? This is 5, I think.
Okay, good.
Okay.
3 more.
So we've talked about how that cells have a lifespan and they are supposed to kind of die and be replaced by new cells at a certain point.
Right, that makes sense.
Apoptosis.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, but as you are aging, there can be not enough cells produced. So a cell dies, but there isn't enough cells being produced to take its place.
Why is that?
So you've heard of stem cells?
Yes.
Yes.
Those are the cells that can be turned into specific types of cells.
Nerve cell, muscle cell.
Yeah.
They're ready to do whatever.
Right.
They're flexible.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, you have a lot of those in your body when you're young, and as you get older, you have less.
Okay.
And so it's much...
Because your body uses them?
And they're not produced as well, and I don't know why as you get older.
All
Maybe
right.
Aubrey de Grey knows.
Yeah. We'll have him on a future episode.
Unlikely, but okay. So as you have fewer of them, they are less available to replenish missing cells or cells that are dying.
Okay.
And so you just cannot have enough cells of certain types. So, for example, as you get older, your heart gets weaker in a lot of cases, and that's because there's fewer cardiac muscle cells.
Okay.
Because
and
they're not
fewer
being-
stem cells to help replace
Because they're
them.
not being replaced. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that's another thing that he wants to fix. And then last two.
Okay, 6 and 7.
Okay. So he talked about having too few cells in some places.
Too many in others?
Too many.
That
yeah.
sounds like cancer.
Okay. So it could be cancer. It could be cells that don't divide when they're supposed to or don't die when they're supposed to. They just kind of keep sitting there. And so they're just like building up over time.
Troublemakers.
Troublemaker cells.
Okay.
These type of cells also tend to secrete things that they are not supposed to. Like they keep secreting things
Troublemakers.
longer than they should.
Just like I said.
Getting in trouble. So they think this could be a maybe cause of like type 2 diabetes.
Oh, okay. Tell me more about that.
I don't know any more about that.
Oh, all right.
He
Well,
didn't say anything more about it in his article.
okay. We should have a show about type 2 diabetes.
Coming soon, later. Okay, last one. This has been exhausting.
Okay.
Okay. Is extracellular protein crosslinks.
Oh.
Okay, so this is also about the space between cells.
Which we don't fully understand.
We don't understand that well, but so he says cells,
We should say, though, that cells aren't always like right up next to each other.
no, there are spaces, but to kind of hold everything together, there are proteins that
Right.
perform links between them. I'm putting the hand up by my face to show you that.
Okay.
But when there are too many of these cells over time,
So that's like, are you talking about like connective tissue?
too much connective tissue.
Okay.
Everything gets either held in a shape that you don't want,
Bound up.
bound up, and you end up with things like presbyopia,
Oh, okay.
which is your
That's a
eyesight.
change in the lens or something like that?
The lens is not as
Oh, it's not
able
as
to
flexible.
adapt as well.
Right, yeah, okay.
As you get older, or you get things like your tissue loses its elasticity, doesn't bounce back like it
Oh,
used to.
and that's like how you can pull on your skin, and when you're younger, it just zips back in, but when you're older, it takes
That's
longer.
my cheek zipping back.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it starts to sag more. You get more wrinkles.
Right, okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Whew. So, those are all of Aubrey de Grey's ideas.
7 things. Those
And
sound reasonable.
He has a research, like this big research facility. It's based in California.
Oh, I thought he was in Europe.
He's from Europe. He went to,
Oh.
I think he must be all over because he also teaches at this university in
all
Moscow.
over.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of the ageless. They can be everywhere.
It's full of energy. I don't know.
All right, so he's in California.
So this is in California. They're working on a lot of research. I think maybe in 100 years or something, this information, this way of thinking of things that they are pushing, like that you don't have to age, that it's not natural, maybe it will become more normal. I mean, lots of things start out abnormal when they're first
That's
introduced.
true. That is very true.
And people think they're strange and weird and will never be accepted, but then they are when people get used to it. So
Yeah.
maybe it will. It seems
Like,
very odd to me
Galileo,
now.
They all thought he was crazy for
Yeah.
saying the Earth was round.
Yeah. Well, was he the first one? I thought it was, or the Copernicus, that the sun
Oh,
was
yeah.
in the center of the solar system.
Copernicus. No one believed
Crazy.
him.
Yeah. But he was right.
Okay.
So it might happen. So he doesn't talk a lot about factors though that Chris mentioned.
Oh,
Chris
okay.
back from the beginning. He
Yeah,
said-
and I was about to say that this episode is going a different way than I was expecting before
it went a
we
different way than
started.
I was expecting before I did the research.
Yeah.
So Chris talked about diet, exercise, supplements, and positive thinking. Wait, that's not how he said it. Ready? Let me do it the right way.
Okay, yeah.
Diet, exercise, supplements, positive thinking.
Perfect.
That's how he said it. And that's what he thinks is going to make the difference in his life. And I think that's maybe what a lot of people do think, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
So does our friend here think that perhaps he's wrong to think that?
he doesn't talk about any of those things at all. I couldn't find anything about things that you can do in your life on his website.
Oh, that's very interesting because it seems
That
like
is not their focus at all. Their
a
focus
lot of
is
the
those
other
7 things.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's good to be focused.
But I did a little bit of research into those 4 things that Chris mentioned. So we're going to talk about diet first.
Okay.
And basically, I can tell you, looking at diet and longevity did not get great search results as far as research articles.
No?
No, not really at all. I found a lot that had to do with like bacteria and fruit flies, and not a lot to do with people.
Oh, interesting.
Uh-huh.
I have one.
You have one?
Did you find any?
Well, I have a little bit to talk about. What do you have?
The one that I found,
What were you doing researching this?
well, I wanted to be slightly informed.
Oh.
It's called Caloric Restriction and Human Longevity.
Yeah, so I did find one about fasting.
What we can learn from the Okinawans.
Yeah.
Oh, you found that one?
No, because that one wouldn't open on my computer. So I didn't, but I have another one about fasting.
Okay, tell me.
So the one that I have, let me go to it.
Now, this whole concept didn't make much sense to me because it seems like not eating would not help you live longer.
Yeah. The one I have is called Live Longer by Eating Less.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a scientific study to me. And the question I've been dying to ask this whole time is about the blue zones.
That's what my other topic was going to be.
Are you going to bring those up?
Yeah.
Because I've heard of that book, and I didn't do any research into whether...
The Okinawans are one of the groups that they studied for blue zones.
Right. But I didn't do any research into whether like the author was doing research or whether he was compiling research and writing about it.
So the blue zones, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
They're just areas where there's kind of isolated populations.
Okay. So this blue zone thing was popularized by a guy named Dan Buettner.
I would say that would be the right pronunciation.
Okay, so he wrote a book in 2010 called The Blue Zones, Lessons for Living Longer from the People Who've Lived the Longest.
So, okay. There are these isolated areas, and the idea was, I guess, to study people living in this area to find out why are they living longer.
Okay.
Okay, anyways, it's these people that live in isolated communities where they have kind of maybe restricted diet or restricted genetic population. They were studying to see what the connecting factors might be.
Okay.
And they did find some connecting diet recommendation, I would say. And that they found that in these groups, in these little populations, for example, they ate very little meat. They said 95% of their food sources were from plant-based sources.
Okay.
They ate some meat, but just very little. That they ate a lot of like beans and legumes. They recommended that was like a high source of where you get like your protein.
Right.
They ate little dairy. They didn't eat very much dairy. They ate little to no sugar.
Okay.
Kind of those sorts of things. So the general result, and it says this study did start with a National Geographic expedition to find areas where people live longest, and then they were studying those areas to find out. Yeah,
because that's the book is sponsored by National Geographic.
Yeah, they kind of started it.
Cover.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they did find correlations, right? These are the sorts of diets that are. And they eat a lot of seafood, so they said they did recommend seafood.
Right.
So these are the sorts of diet recommendations based on correlations. Like the people in these areas live longer. The people in these areas tend to eat diets that follow these rules. But that doesn't mean causation, and I don't think that has been clearly established.
These two different approaches to looking at longevity, they feel so different to me. Mm-hmm. The first one that we talked about, and I can't really explain why, but for some reason this blue zone one feels a lot less like worthwhile, but the other one feels crazy.
Yeah. Well, the blue zone I think sounds to me like a self-help book or something.
Marketing.
Yeah.
that's all marketing. But
yeah. So I don't know. We can also talk a little bit about fasting if that article will work. So live longer by eating less? ? This is research from University of Southern California. It's kind of vague because this is a little abstract and I couldn't get the full article.
Okay.
So it says they had a group of people lower their calories and eat a low sugar, low protein diet. So not much. I guess it must have been just like complex carbs, maybe some fat, I guess, for 5 consecutive days.
Okay.
Once a month for 3 months.
And they lived longer.
Well, they don't know that they lived longer, but they lowered their risk markers, their lab values for heart disease, diabetes, cancer. So
Interesting.
they figured that they would live longer. They just, this is not a long-term study, so they don't know that yet.
Right. So the whole issue of dieting and longevity is more of like an environmental thing. It's what the general thing is that there's some type of relationship between what you put in your body and how long your body can live.
Yeah, what you put in your body, what your body's exposed to, right?
Right.
Yeah, if you work in a chemical factory, you probably are putting a lot of chemicals into your body.
Well, that's a different type of environmental exposure.
Right.
But in general, those are almost the same kind of things. There's things that your body takes in, and those affect how well you can continue to live in one way or another.
Combined with the genetic factors, which Aubrey de Grey is more focused on, I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So I'll bring up this point here that I read. So do you think that the de Grey character is more interested in the genetic factors? Is that what
as far as I could say, he didn't mention anything about what can you do to make yourself healthier or
Right. So I saw this study that was done. They call it a twin study, and so what they found was
meaning they use twins in it.
Right.
They don't just call it a twin study.
They called it that. They called it a twin study because they used twins. Anyways, what they found was that genetics accounted for about 25% of the variation in longevity, whereas environmental factors accounted for 50%. It just seems to me like if we...
And what about the rest?
Yeah, well, they don't say what the rest
25%.
is. But it seems to me like he is leaving out a big portion. But then you said, well, maybe he doesn't want to start his treatments, this de Grey guy doesn't want to start treatments until later.
Yeah.
And so then I also read that with greater longevity, genetic influences become more important.
Right.
So the older you are, the more important your genetics are to how long you can live.
Yes. But if he's saying, and we'll get back to what I feel like it was hard to know which order to present things in, and you've kind of interrupted we're going back to what Chris was saying.
I interrupted the flow.
Yes, you did. Sorry.
Good.
It's okay. So Chris, diet, exercise. This is next point.
Positive thinking.
Supplements, positive thinking.
Okay.
So exercise, there's lots of good research. I'm not going to go into all the studies that say exercise increases your health and therefore usually increases your longevity.
I have heard that exercise can be good for your health.
So I'm not even going to bother to go much into that.
Not much dispute there.
It doesn't really need much. Yeah. There were some studies talking about the difference of exercising for longevity versus exercising for like physical fitness or training or competition.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a lot on that.
But in general, being active is good and is probably going to lengthen your life.
Yeah. I think the only time that you get into that kind of issue is with professional athletes. that are training super hard in specific areas and then end up burning out.
Yeah.
And like a good example is Ryan Hall, who was the fastest American.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's the fastest American marathoner.
Okay.
But he just recently retired from the sport, really young. He kind of blames it on training too hard, and so
did too much.
I'm not sure about life, how long his life is going to be, but he does say that he trained too hard, and that messes with all sorts of stuff. And there's a whole stuff on overtraining syndrome.
Continue some nice, gentle exercise. He'll be fine. Some nice, slow jogs a couple times a week. I don't know.
So there definitely is a bell curve with exercise.
Yeah.
You can do it too much, but in the vast majority of the time,
it's going to be good.
It's good.
So, supplements.
Okay. Supplements, I'm going to say, are the most controversial.
Sorry, Chris. Yeah. There's not a lot of good evidence, at least in general, looking at like supplements and vitamins and longevity. Maybe there are for specific ones, but just looking at generally, no. Or searching the term like supplements. If you know a specific supplement to search, maybe there's more evidence for some specific things. I don't know. In general, the things that I found were all in like fruit flies.
Okay. So the research wasn't very generalizable.
No. And I did see one, like a population-based survey. So they were just surveying people about their health habits. And one of the question was, do you take any vitamins or supplements? And then they were looking at, did that affect their longevity and then their likelihood of getting cancer later on.
Okay.
Which would affect your longevity.
Right. Yes.
They saw no connection.
Okay.
So it didn't really affect anything in that population survey.
Right.
They did actually say there was a concern because sometimes people take too much of various supplements and there can be problems with like toxicity or harming yourself, actually.
There's a lot of misinformation or at least like misunderstanding around supplements, it seems like.
So that study said they didn't find anything that it seemed like it was helpful on a population-based basis anyways, and that there was actually potential for harm. So they recommended considering not doing any vitamins or supplements.
Yeah.
Unless it's specifically recommended for a specific reason.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I've always wondered whether the evidence for supplements was bad because there's a bunch of research on it and we know that it's bad, or because the reason that supplements are controversial to me is that there's this whole other market of like selling supplements that, aren't approved by the FDA as drugs. So, and people make a lot of money off of these. So, and that makes me question.
People feel like they're not medicine, so they don't have to worry as much about.
Yeah.
People don't want to take medicine all the time, but they're like, oh, it's just a supplement, or it's
that makes me
natural
question
or something.
all of it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So not great research as far as I can tell at this time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have the monetary incentive to be researched as much as like drugs. So
right.
It's hard to say. So Chris's last point. Positive thinking.
I have good thoughts about this one.
Do you have positive thoughts?
I have positive thoughts that this one's going to be good for longevity.
It does have some support. So there are lots of studies actually that are focused on how people with negative emotions have poorer health outcomes.
Okay.
So I guess you would think that if you have positive, thinking, you would have more positive health outcomes.
Positive thinking and longevity, that's a very placebo-y kind of issue.
So, and the study that I looked at, they talked about emotional style. So if you have a negative emotional style or a positive emotional style, meaning like
how are they measuring emotional style?
So the study that they did was based on autobiographical writings.
Oh, weird.
So people
have to turn in a writing sample for this study?
And they did it was a psychology study, and they did it on famous psychologists that had like submitted writing samples for this
so it's like retrospective.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And so they looked at, it was, they were supposed to have submitted a autobiographical sample of like their life for this book.
Okay.
And then they analyzed it for words, positive emotional words, negative emotional words to see what was their main style, I guess. And then they also looked at
But you write differently than you talk and stuff.
True, but that's what they're looking at.
Okay.
And these people are already dead, so they couldn't go.
Okay.
And then they looked at arousal level, like how excited they were or how like not excited they were about things. So they could be
about having to write an autobiography.
No, like the type of words that they use.
Okay.
Like were they like very enthusiastic word choice, or very like it was a pleasant day, like, or it was like a great day, or it was it was kind of a bummer, or it was terrible, the worst ever. So they were like rating on that scale too.
Okay.
Okay. So they said that people who wrote with a high arousal and positive emotion were typically had a 3 to 6 year longer lifespan than people who didn't have those traits in their writing.
Right.
So that's something. But they didn't have any correlation in people that had like lower arousal but positive words, so that they were just like, oh, it was nice. They didn't have as good of an example. Positive. I know. They didn't have any correlation though.
They're just not as good at writing expressively.
Maybe. I don't know.
I'm not sure I like the way they measured this.
I just thought it was a funny study.
It is funny.
But in general, yeah, there are lots of studies that do show this correlation where people that are more negative have, and that's what's been studied mostly, the people that are more negative have worse outcomes. So in general, positive thinking should at least not have worse outcomes.
Hard to study positive thinking though, right?
It's a self-report too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris is very positive in Parks and Rec. He tries.
Yeah, isn't that why the other character breaks up with him or something? Because he's too positive.
Well, she doesn't know that they've broken up.
When
he's dating Anne.
And this is too much.
She just thinks that they're having a conversation about moving, that he's moving back to a different city. And he's broken up with her, but she doesn't even know it.
Because he's so positive.
Because he's so positive and so nice and cheerful. She just thinks they're having a hard talk about where is their relationship going because he's moving. And he's like, no, it's ended. Okay. So those are things that...
How much do we agree with Chris?
Chris? Oh, pretty well. I mean, diet, probably, to some extent. I mean, if you're eating junk food all the time, I think that's pretty obvious that's not going to help your health.
Yeah.
It's a little bit unclear what would be the best diet, though.
It seems common sense that what you eat will determine the health of your body and therefore how long you live.
Yes.
Right? Or at least have some type of effect on it, if not directly, indirectly.
Yeah. Maybe fasting. That's just, I can't do that. If I don't eat, I feel so sick.
Well, see, and what I didn't understand is, like, you eat to get nutrients. So say that you're getting the right type of nutrients, whatever that is. Wouldn't that be better than not eating at all?
I don't know all the research.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exercise, we agree with Chris there.
Although Chris exercises a lot. He might be doing too much.
Yeah. Supplements, that might not be a good idea, Chris.
Supplements, he might just have expensive pee.
Yeah.
That's what one of my teachers said.
And then positive thinking. Yeah, probably could be helpful. Probably is certainly not helping.
So was it hard to find research on positive thinking and longevity?
Yes.
Is it hard to find? Did you look in other areas like positive thinking and things that are correlated with longevity, like overall health
or something? No, I didn't try that. I wonder if there'd be more research on that.
Because I feel like almost similar to supplements, but in a different way. Like positive thinking has this big cult following of like people thinking that it's the most important thing for your health. I'm not sure people who take supplements do, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think. Well, and I think I hoped to have a future episode about that, because I do feel like in patients at the hospital, people that have a negative outlook generally do worse, generally don't heal that well.
Yeah.
Generally come back a lot. And people that are really positive generally recover when you don't expect them to, that sort of stuff.
Says one person.
Says a lot of my coworkers
well, yeah.
too. And I just wonder if that's our perception or is that real?
I'm not trying to argue. I'm just pointing out the other side.
So that's why I want to have another further look at that.
I think we should.
I want to talk about, Aubrey de Grey, when I come back to him one more time, we talked about what he wants to do.
Right.
Now, and we talked about treatments kind of vaguely. Do you want to talk about what he actually wants, like the treatments?
I don't know. I'm kind of scared.
It's gene therapy for the most part.
Okay.
And I'll just mention it maybe briefly because I want to have an episode just about that, really.
Is gene therapy like using CRISPR to edit and stuff like that?
I'm not sure about CRISPR.
Oh.
I don't remember CRISPR.
CRISPR's
I like saying CRISPR.
CRISPR's the thing that started off bacterial, but it's a method of going into DNA and editing it very precisely and putting in exactly what you want to change.
Yeah. So say, and I've heard of gene therapy used in people with a genetic disorder, say.
Okay.
So say there's an area of DNA that's missing or that's mutated on the chromosome. So what they can do now is that you can make a virus that has that specific missing piece that
this is CRISPR
piece that you need. Okay.
Yeah.
And that you would basically infect the person with that.
Yeah.
So say you have this genetic disorder.
It might not be exactly CRISPR, but that's basically.
Okay. Or you've aged and you have some DNA that's damaged now. So you would have a virus that would go into you and replace that damaged DNA with the whole correct DNA. And that would reverse the aging process.
Okay.
And they also talk about things like regrowing organs that can be replaced or replacing body parts, things like that, with things grown in a lab.
I have a grievance I need to air right now.
Okay.
Relating to gene therapy and specifically CRISPR.
I don't know what CRISPR is. Can we talk about it when we have our gene therapy episode?
Yeah, but Radiolab did an episode called Antibodies Part 1, CRISPR.
Oh, and there was no Part 2. I remember.
And don't you think that there should be a Part 2?
You've talked about this
That was
before.
an episode that was so interesting. And
You've talked about this before.
Radiolab needs to make a Part 2. It's been like 6 months.
Okay,
They
maybe
should
they
have
are.
named it Part 1 if they didn't plan on having a Part 2.
Maybe they didn't. Something happened.
Well, they should change the name. It's still called Part 1. I just looked it up. It's not that hard to change.
All right, so let's wrap it up here.
Okay.
Okay, wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
So,
come on, Radiolab.
I think let's talk about the oldest known human.
Right.
We're gonna come
122.
back. Yes,
I remember.
122 and a half, I think, actually, when she
Ooh,
died.
Impressive.
Her name was Jeanne Calment.
She was French, huh?
She was French. She was from Arles in France.
Okay.
And she lived there her whole life.
All right. In the same city.
She was born February 21st, 1875. And she died August 4th, 1997.
Okay.
So she was alive in our lifetime, and she was born in 1875.
Pretty wild.
It's crazy.
I assume that she was interviewed a lot of times about how she got to live so
toward
old.
the end of her life, I think Van Gogh also did a lot of his paintings in that same area in France. And apparently she met him when she was young.
Uh-huh.
And so when it was the centenary of his death, when she was 100 and something, I think, she was interviewed for that, and that's when people first noticed her. She was 13, and her father owned a shop, and she sold him some, like, canvases and pencils or something.
Cool.
Yeah, she said that he was smelly and sick.
Well,
That's what her remembrance of. But he did beautiful paintings, and he was mentally
well,
ill,
what?
I guess.
She was 113 when she was interviewed for that one.
I guess
That's a long time ago. She might not remember.
She might not remember that
how
well.
it was.
So some interesting facts about Jeanne.
Okay.
She lived on her own in her own home until she was 110.
Wow.
At that point, she had a small cooking fire that they thought might have been because she didn't see very well, and so she moved into more assisted living at that point.
Okay.
She took up fencing when she was 85.
Ooh.
She decided she would start learning fencing.
To keep you healthy.
And she rode her bike until she was 100
Well, you got to get around.
to get around. I saw in one place that she smoked her whole life until she was over 100, but that was not very well confirmed, so I'm not sure if that was true, if they're just like...
I feel like if that was true, the tobacco companies would be all
Yeah.
over that story.
So I'm not sure if that's right.
Lady list to 122.
She, a little bit sad, she was married. She had only one daughter. Her husband died in like the 1940s when he was in his 70s.
Oh.
She was a little bit older than her, but still. Like
Wow.
he died, he like
She
lived a
almost
normal
lived
life.
twice as long as him.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
She had one daughter who died, unfortunately, of pneumonia when she was in her 30s.
Jeez.
In like early 1900s. And then she raised her grandson after that, and her grandson also died in his 30s of
She
a car
literally
accident.
lived longer than everyone else she knew.
She did have other family members that lived to their 90s, but no one lived nearly as long as her.
Wow.
She said that her long life was due to her diet. That's what
Okay.
she felt.
That's what they
Which-
always say, though.
Which, here's her diet. Rich in olive oil, port wine, and chocolate. She ate about 2 pounds of chocolate per week, she said.
And now we have to do all the studies to figure out if chocolate is good for longevity or not.
But one other thing, she said her calmness, she also felt was a reason that she lived long.
Oh.
She said, that's why they call me Calme, which is her name.
I feel like I've seen stuff on the interviews of people that are of a certain age, and they always say things like that, like, I have 1 glass of wine a day, or I smoke a cigar every 2 weeks.
Well,
they never know why they're that
something has
old.
worked out,
They just
though.
say what they do regularly.
Well, and it could be a factor. Who knows?
But that is an
She
interesting
said that
point.
she ate a lot of olive oil, and she rubbed it on her skin also.
It's an interesting point that if you ask someone, probably without any regards to what they know about longevity or anything, they always assume that diet has something to do with it, whatever
And I'm
you
sure
put
it
into
does.
your body.
I'm sure it does to
But-
some extent. So anyways, she looked, I would say, in her pictures, you can look her up online, Jeanne Calmet, she doesn't look that old. Like in her pictures, there's like one for her 121st birthday. She looks like an elderly lady, but I would not think she was 122 or
Kinda
121.
crazy. Is there anyone close to her in terms of how
I think
long
the next
they've lived?
lady that is currently alive is 116, I think.
And she's also a lady?
Oh, yeah,
assume
the
by
oldest-
fact that you said lady.
Yeah, the oldest people are all ladies.
I read that too.
Well, ladies always live longer.
One of the blue zone areas was in Italy, and it had the ratio of female centenarians, meaning someone who's reached 100 years or more, to male centenarians was 7-1 in a city in northern Italy.
Women always, well, like I read the life expectancy at the beginning. Women was 81 and men was 76. It's always...
Yeah. Interesting.
So let's wrap it up here.
That certainly suggests that genetics has something to do with age.
Something in women that lets them live longer. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I want to wrap it up here.
Okay.
So I guess the question is, it seems like it may be possible to live longer or quite a bit longer in the future. Is that something that you want? Do you think that would be a good thing for the world?
I knew you were going to come back to the
we don't have to answer
issues.
It can be a philosophical question or rhetorical question to leave on. I think for me, I don't know. I mean, I still feel like I'm only 30. I hope to live, 60 more years.
Yeah, but would you have the same answer when you're 70 and then say, well, would you want to live another 70 years?
Depends on if I can reverse that aging maybe and feel like better. I did when I was 40, I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, if other people around you are not doing that and all your friends and family are dying, do you want that?
Yeah. Maybe everyone should be getting older at the same time.
I don't know. And then there was a question in one of the articles I saw about birth rate that they were asking Aubrey de Grey.
Uh-huh.
Like, if no one is dying...
Yeah.
Can't really have kids.
We're gonna have to find a new planet.
And he said, he kind of dismissed it. He said, when there was the Industrial Revolution and people started to live a lot longer than they used to, before medicine became as good as it is now,
right?
The birth rate just adjusted itself, and it's not been a problem pretty quickly.
Huh. Well, the birth rate is a problem now, though.
Well, he says no, and he thinks it would adjust, but that would mean everyone deciding not to have kids. Everyone that wanted to stay alive decided not to have kids, really.
Well, maybe by the time...
Although there would still be accidents, I guess, or...
Yeah. By the time that Aubrey de Grey's things start to happen, then we'll have a colony on Mars, and we'll have enough space.
That's the thing, we gotta colonize other planets.
Yeah.
Space, the final frontier.
This episode got way bigger than we expected.
Okay, so let's wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Space.
Mars.
We'll call it an episode.
So dry and red on Mars. It needs more water and greenery.
Well, maybe they'll do the
terraforming.
Yeah, before you go there.
Okay.
You're probably also going to need to live till you're like 1,000 if you want that to happen.
I would like to go to another planet.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'd go with you.
Maybe that's how we can survive long-term space travel.
First podcast from Mars.
Maybe that's how people will survive long-term space travel, because that's the problem. It takes too long to get places. They just need to not age.
Oh, so you're
thinking
would still
be really boring.
Not the very... Yeah, you need to have really big spaceships so that you could have some different things to do.
Like a cruise ship. Okay. So, thank you for listening this week.
That's WALL-E. That's where they all die on the cruise ship and get really fat.
Okay. Back it up a step.
Okay, well, that's the episode.
That's the episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, maybe you could share it with a friend or give us a like on iTunes.
That would be cool.
Yes.
And we also have a website, placebopodcast.com, where you can go and see all our past episodes and find out any information about the show that you want.
You can also send us an email from there if you have any suggestions or
We'd
requests.
love suggestions and feedback so
yes.
that we can do the episodes people are interested in.
Yep. Thank you to James Aiken for our music.
And we'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.